Parks Commission meeting to order. And first order of our business is to approve the minutes of January. And if we would need a motion and a second.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes. I have a couple of edits, and then I am on, right? Yeah.
Just a minute, we'll get a second. We need one of our
Well,
Zoom
usually-
participants to get a second.
We usually do the edits first, and then somebody seconds it, but you're the chair. You want a second first?
Yeah, I need a second.
Okay.
I'll do a second.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second. Good. Now you can go, Scott, or
Okay.
Patrick, I mean. Jeez.
I have a couple of edits, and then I have a paragraph that I would like to suggest adding. I'll do the edits first. In the minutes of the January 7th meeting, in 5B, the paragraph in there that starts out, Steve Arnold presented this project. In the middle of the paragraph, it says, discuss, do, and sue. I am not sure where you were going with that. I would suggest that it replaced with, this item was discussed, including questions and answers. Okay? And then in 6B, the paragraph starts out, Scott Endel provided an update, so that should be an update, A-N. All right, that's the edits, and then this is related to, it would be 5D and 5E, those two resolutions that we discussed regarding finding money to save. So we went through and we made our decisions on what recommendations we wanted to make as we were asked to do by the council. And then I think it would be important to have in our minutes the extra work, the effort and the thinking and all that we put into this. So I would place after 5E and just before 6, a paragraph that reads like this. I will note that our Alder representative on the council, Alder Schroeder, did explain this to the council. And of course, the council has already decided on this. It's just to show in our minutes that we did what we were asked to do to come up with recommendations. So I would suggest adding this. The commission agreed to rank the 3 options in order of preference. The first ranked and top preference is the recommendation to reduce the CIP funding. The second preference and less in favor while still recommended is the delay in a vehicle purchase. And the third ranked and not recommended is cutting operation expenses. The commission acknowledged that the council may decide to use any of these options as the council sees fit. So that's what I would suggest.
Yeah, I think that certainly provides some additional context and recommendations from the Park Commission, so that.
Yeah, it shows that we did our work, and then, as I say, Alder Schroeder already did advise the council of that actions that we took place.
I don't remember, but did we leave that open-ended,
Well,
resolution?
What we did is we voted and we agreed on not cutting the operating budget. That was actually what I ranked here third, or what I mentioned. And then we did recommend as our top preference reducing the CIP funding. As Scott explained, there's money in there. The council gives more money each year anyway. And then the other choice was the second resolution, which was 5E, which was delaying a vehicle purchase for 1 year, and we gave that a second ranking.
Yeah,
And that was the one that the council ultimately decided to go with.
And that was just, additional clarification on how the Park Commission felt about each of the three different options.
Right. So that's where we come up with the ranking. So I wanted to ask if that's agreeable to the rest of the members.
Okay, any other
Did you call for no, as long as there's no objection?
amendments or changes, or even comments on it? I don't know. Hearing none. Voting on the amended draft of the January 7th, 2021 meeting minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried, I believe. Right, Scott? I can't hear it, so.
Yep.
All right.
It passed, and then Patrick will get me the text.
Yes.
So I can make sure that I
Yep.
put it in correctly.
Yes.
All right. Next on our agenda is item 3, which is public appearances, and we do have a public appearance on our Zoom program, which is Michael Stevens. And Michael, you have the floor if you'd like to speak on whatever comments you might have. And just for
Thank
the
you.
record, state your name and address so that Scott will get it correct too.
All right. I'm Michael Stevens, 34 Woodbrook Way, Fitchburg, Wisconsin.
Thank you.
I'm here as president of the Seminole Glen Homes Unit Owners Association, and I'm here to comment on a problem that needs to be fixed as you update the current park and open space plan, which is an item that is on your agenda today. A little more than 2 years ago, Fitchburg residents were outraged when they learned about a plan to put a beer garden in McKee Farms Park. Citizens in every aldermanic district wrote and called their representatives, and as a result, a majority of the members of the city council committed in writing to oppose the plan, and Fitchburg's mayor ordered a halt to the project. The key concern revolved around the idea of installing year-round alcohol sales 7 days a week in the middle of the park. Its proximity to the Kids Castle and Splash Pad, limits on shelter rentals, and unfair advantage over tax-paying businesses were among many reasons for the opposition. So how did this misbegotten project get started? The problem began with a lack of transparency and clarity in the Parks and Open Space Plan. One can read the action plan without ever encountering references to alcohol or beer sales in Fitchburg parks. Public agendas for Parks Commission meetings where this was discussed never once referred to beer gardens or alcohol sales. And public meeting notices for neighbors studiously avoided the same language, simply referring to them as meetings to discuss, quote, food and drink concessions, unquote. To many, they sounded like discussions of vending machines. And yet when citizens learned of the reality and raised their concerns, they were told it was in the parks plan, which carried the authority of the city council. I can see now how some oblique references to sales of food and drink or to food and drink gardens were used to justify the effort. Perhaps it was my naivete to focus on the word gardens, assuming it was a reference to future flowering plants, rather than mixing alcohol sales with a splash pad and an inclusive playground. I'm still amazed as to why none of these notices or reference mention the idea of a year-round, 7-day-a-week alcohol sales, or to what is effectively a tavern in the park. I suggest that if clear and transparent language had been included, such a plan would have drawn even wider citizen concern. I'm here to ask that as you are updating the plan for the next 5 years, that action item 2A be deleted in future versions and all references to food and drink gardens or to the sales of food and drink in parks be deleted from the action plan. Further, I ask that the Parks Commission add language to that plan, clarifying that no recommendations in the plan should be construed to permit the sale of alcoholic beverages, with the exception of permitted time-limited activities such as festivals and concerts. In the name of good government, the decision to open taverns and park facilities is one that should be made by elected officials in an open and transparent process. It should not be moved forward under innocuous-sounding language in the current plan. Thank you for hearing my concerns.
Very good. Thank you, Michael. Is there any questions for Michael? Oh,
Yeah,
go ahead, Pat.
I will call a point of order. I didn't want to interrupt you, Michael. Just technically speaking, since this is on our agenda as 5D, your comments would be more appropriate, or actually the appropriate way would be under 5D, but I would suggest that in our minutes that we just count Michael's comments as under 5D rather than public appearance non-agenda items, because this is an agenda item.
Yeah.
And under the agenda item, then we can discuss it.
If you have any questions for Michael, though?
Well, Michael, will you be staying around through 5D on the agenda?
I'm told I'm supposed to log off of
Yeah.
Zoom and watch it on the stream.
Michael,
That's
if
what
you're-
I was
if
advised.
you're on the agenda item, you may stick around.
Well, let's not get hung up on all this procedure stuff. I think you came here with a message, and
Yeah.
that's why I want to keep it.
Right. It's just if we start discussing between membership, that would have to be under 5D rather than public appearance on agenda item. Questions would be fine here.
Yeah.
So, Michael, will you be staying for the 5D agenda item?
I was advised not that I wouldn't, then it's at the end of the agenda that there was a possibility when the agenda was approved that might be moved up earlier, but
Oh.
that's beyond my control.
You can stay if you want. You can stay on.
All right?
I think
Anybody,
that is
any one of our
If you
participants
think
on
of comments,
Zoom?
I understand that this is an issue that is going to be dealt with over a year's time. And that at least my older informed me that no decisions were going to be made tonight. But if decisions are going to be made tonight, then I should stay.
What district are you in?
2.
Thank
Okay.
you, Michael.
Okay.
We're going to move on to our other agenda items. We have no other questions.
I
And,
do have a question.
I don't,
Somebody has a question.
what's that?
This is David Gorder. I do have a question. I'd like to just thank Michael for taking the time to appear here. And I do think this is a very serious issue. Clarity and transparency is important. And just because it was written in a plan and put on a shelf for the most part, and then pulled out 5 years later, it does not give license to the park director or the Parks Commission just to proceed without significant public input. And I don't mean a token gesture, I mean a robust discussion. City of Fitchburg does not have a amplified sound ordinance, and yet in this proposal, the Parks Director was firmly engaged in talking about an activity for which it hadn't been properly vetted. And it's appalling to think that that's acceptable, frankly. And Michael's comment about taxpayer-funded facilities being used for private use, and the same concept was floated for the Stoner Prairie Park, where we now have across the street Hop House that has a beer garden. For God's sake, what are we thinking of? Or are we just going through this in a rote manner? I think the city of Fitchburg's Chamber of Commerce needs to participate in the Parks Commission. I think that their involvement is important, and not to have this rear guard action to try to have all the citizens scurry around and try to change something. I spent 3 months trying to address this back when it was first raised. There was a RFP that went out in March, and the first time there was any public involvement was in November. That's wrong. That concludes my comments.
And maybe if I could just offer a comment in regards to your reference to the Stoner Prairie Park, including that in the plan. That was the neighborhood's suggestion on a potential amenity within their park. So that was something that the neighborhood was in support of, the way it appeared.
Scott, when you speak of the neighborhood, who is the neighborhood? Where was the meeting? Where were the minutes? Who participated? Please don't say neighborhood when you're talking about two people.
Let's not re-debate this thing right now. I mean, I think there's an appropriate time and place to do that when we take a look at our plan, but let's try to get this moved on so we can get through our meeting anyway. I'd like to move on to item 4, which is review and approval of agenda. Motion and a
I-
second.
I would like to ask if Steve Arnold is on Zoom. He is? Okay. With that in light, I would suggest we alter the agenda to do first A, which is Fitchburg Greenway System, Steve Arnold, and then the second one, move D up, since we have one person, Michael Stevens, interested in the park and open space plan. And then I am assuming, tell me if there is anybody attending who is for B and C, which is the North Fitchburg Hatchery Hub Community Park Classification and Proposed Zoning. Anybody registered for that, or
These aren't big items. I mean, gee whiz.
what?
These aren't huge items. I mean, the park and open space plan is a work item, which is going to take far more than just this meeting.
Would you rather go in the order given?
Pardon me?
Would you rather go in the order given here?
I would prefer it, yeah.
Okay, all right, then I withdraw the change. I'll move to approve the agenda as written.
I would need a second from one of our Zoom participants.
Second. I'll second.
Thank you.
I think David got
All
it.
those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, motion carried. We are down to item 5, discussion items, and 5A is Fitchburg Greenway System. Steve Arnold, are you there, or is this something that,
I am here.
oh, there you are. The floor is yours, Steve.
Yeah, I'll introduce myself. I'll drive if you don't mind, Scott. Sure. Okay. Steve Arnold, 2530 Targhee Street, representing myself, but also Bike Fitchburg, which I won't mention again. I'm the treasurer of Bike Fitchburg. Okay, so you should be seeing my presentation, which was also in your packet.
Yes.
Very good. So this presentation was made and this proposal was approved by Bike Fitchburg at their monthly board meeting on January 25th. And so I bring it to you as a project of Bike Fitchburg and not just of myself. Let's see. So the proposal is for a greenway system in Fitchburg. What is a greenway? There's a definition here which you can read, but basically a greenway is paths, non-motorized paths, and oftentimes waterways, vegetation, providing a linear park. And so moving along, to put it in perspective, we all know about the hierarchy of highways, from motorways down to private service roads like driveways and private streets. There's a similar hierarchy for bicycles. There is a U.S. bicycle route system, which recently designated U.S. Bike Route 30 through Madison, from Milwaukee and Chicago up to the Twin Cities. And we have, of course, our state trail system and regional trails like the, we're lucky in Fitchburg to have the Military Ridge, the Capital City Trail, the Badger. A greenway connects neighborhoods. It's a local bicycle trail that's signed and designated. And today we have just 2 of them, the Cannonball Path and the Military Ridge Path, that connect at the roundabout, bicycle roundabout, with the regional trails. And Madison's Southwest Path comes in there as well. And then you have local paths and cycleways that connect blocks. In particular, they connect neighborhood streets, which are generally safe for biking, to these more long distance paths. Some of the characteristics of a greenway are that they support people who bike, walk dogs and push babies, rollerblade. So they typically will have a paved multi-use path. If it's a very busy area, like at Monona Terrace, you'll have bicycles and pedestrians separate bicycle and pedestrian ways. Except for emergencies and maintenance like snow plowing or crack filling, greenways prohibit motor vehicles. They're generally vegetated, although you can have connections that are all hardscape. They connect neighborhoods, so they're longer than the local paths. They support two-way traffic, and so they have to be at least 10 feet or 3 meters wide so that couples walking or bicyclists can pass each other safely in opposite directions. And I've already mentioned that we can, in busy places, we can segregate bike and foot traffic. Another place where this is on the Timmins Lakeshore Path near University Bay in Madison. To establish a greenway system in Fitchburg, I've outlined a couple of steps here. First of all, recognize our existing assets, and that's what most of this presentation is about. Designate the greenways in a plan, map the greenway system phases, plan, secure funding, and install signage. Signage is what makes a greenway a greenway. It makes it part of the local bicycle network. So if you cross the Southwest Path in Madison or the Cannonball Path on Post Road, there's a street sign that says you're crossing this local bicycle path. Over time, you want to improve the network by eliminating bottlenecks and gaps. Bottlenecks could be unsafe crossings or dangerous crossings or areas that are less than 10 feet wide. Improve the right-of-way and crossings. So, for example, benches, shade trees, and so on. I think an important part for us to consider is to expand into underserved neighborhoods. Like many kinds of city services, greenways can be more prevalent in affluent neighborhoods because folks have the opportunity to get down to City Hall and ask for things instead of underserved neighborhoods. Folks might be holding down 3 jobs and not have time to work on amenities. And then a greenway system needs to be maintained. And I'm going to talk about each of these things in turn. By the way, this is along Nobel Drive on a rainy day in Fitchburg back in the spring. So these are the candidate greenways that I've recognized. They all contain multi-use paths and are relatively long, usually more than a mile long. The violet highlights are the regional paths, Cap City, Cannonball, Military Ridge, and the Badger. The blue highlights are our current local bicycle network and those that I'm proposing in this proposal. So does people show a sign of recognition if you see my pointer here on Dunn's Marsh? Okay, so today we have the Military Ridge Path and the Cannonball Path are locally maintained and part of our local system. There's no dotted line here because these are the areas that are closed due to the sewer construction through next December. But they are in fact part of the network. The other blue areas, like particularly here in District 3, they are very prevalent, are multi-use paths that are long and could be designated as greenways, but are not. I've mapped this as if the greenway system existed today. I if this is adopted and we start to move on this plan, I'll remap these as proposed greenways, and so there'll be gray dashed highlights instead of the current blue ones. This is OpenStreetMap. OpenStreetMap is a geographical wiki that anybody can contribute to. And so I've been doing the bike and pedestrian mapping in Fitchburg, and this, among many other contributors. And this is just a snapshot of the bike version of OpenStreetMap. This whole project was inspired by the new bikeway multi-use path along Fish Hatchery Road, is built as part of the Fish Hatchery Road construction. We're showing here Traceway Drive at Fish Hatchery Road. Here's the Fitchburg Springs Dental. To my left here is the new 150-unit senior apartments and the golf course. You can see we've got 10-foot wide pavement. We've got a center line here in front of the Fitchburg Ridge Shopping Center to remind folks that there might be bikes coming and that all users should keep to the right. These markings are called elephant tracks, and they designate a bicycle and pedestrian crossing instead of just the stripes or the zebras, which would generally designate a crosswalk for only pedestrians. Curb ramps and detectable warnings. And up here you can see this is actually 12-foot wide, but it has the required 2 feet shy space between the retaining wall and where the traffic should be. There will be traffic signals here, but they're not there yet. Expect those this coming construction season. So these are the steps to create a greenway system in Fitchburg using our municipal processes. First, the staff and park commission, that's you all, would look at this idea and think it a good one. And I hope that starts tonight. Later, there would be a resolution drafted by park staff to the Common Council to establish this. There would be recommendations with that from the department staff, would be referred to the park commission, back to you all, to allow the public to weigh in on this idea. This is in the spirit of transparency, Michael. Optional review by other committees, for example, CETA, public safety, and even planning may have interest in this, and those commissions might be consulted. Certainly those at the staff level, the staff of other related departments would be asked to weigh in. Common Council would take final action, then it would be implementation in the field. Now this is just one of the steps I'm illustrating here. Detailed mapping and OpenStreetMap review. This shows the intersection, I think you're all familiar with it, of Fish Hatchery Road and Sherrill Drive and East Sherrill Drive. And here there is a crosswalk, and there's a multi-use path here, and there's a multi-use path that leads off to the east and a sidewalk on the north side of East Sherrill Drive. This is a bottleneck. It's very well known to our public works staff, or actually our park maintenance staff, who have to use special equipment for this highlighted stretch here. These are its attributes in OpenStreetMap, the geographic attributes of a way. It's only 5 foot wide. It's historically a sidewalk, and there's a traffic signal right here. And so you cannot plow this area with the pickup truck like the parks maintenance staff would prefer. You have to use a Bobcat or a Jeep with a smaller plow to get through this bottleneck. And so by mapping these kinds of bottlenecks and defects in the system, then they can be targeted for improvement later. For example, when Fish Hatchery Road is rebuilt, these traffic signals could be moved and this could be stretched out like we see happening up on North Fish Hatchery Road. This is the kind of signage that a greenway has. This is the Velo Underround or bicycle roundabout. And you can see they have bicycle and pedestrian logos, and they mark the regional paths. The Badger State Trail, the Cannonball Path is one of our existing greenways. So we would have, imagine Fish Hatchery Road, for example, and imagine a cross street like Trace Way or Post Road. In addition to the street signs showing the crossing streets, there would be an additional sign with the bicycle and pedestrian logo that said Fish Hatchery Greenway, or at another location, perhaps crossing Fish Hatchery Road at Nobel Drive, Nobel Greenway. And so there's expense to this, but it is not like building paths or especially building roads. One of the study items, should you agree to go ahead with this, would be to determine for each designated pathway how many signs and, if necessary, additional signposts would be needed. For example, at the intersection of the proposed Tower Hill Greenway and Yarmouth Greenway within McKee Farms Park, there is no post, so you would need a post as well as the signs on top. We are offering, as Bike Fitchburg, to do a lot of the legwork for this, to do the field surveys, enumerate the needed signs and signposts, and even to get estimates for what it would cost to put in these signs, but that would not circumvent the city's bid process. I know we have a signage proposal out now for citywide wayfinding. In addition to these street signs, we'd have welcome signs at boundaries, like at the Beltline in front of Zimbrick Buick, where the proposed Fish Hatchery Greenway starts, the new multi-use path. It'd say, welcome to the Fish Hatchery Greenway. At the other end of that greenway, as Whalen Road, you would say, welcome to the Fish Hatchery Greenway. Now, these are obviously optional, but they're to promote an asset that people can use both for recreation and transportation. You could also put maps, for example, at the Dolly Bike Hub, McKee Farms Park, the Velo Underround, the roundabout, and there is a stone pedestal at the Green Bridge over Fish Hatchery Road that is begging for a map like this. Over time, you want to improve the network, things like filling in gaps with new facilities, that is paths or bike lanes or cycle tracks, mitigating bottlenecks like I mentioned at Fish Hatchery and Sherrill Drive, making crossings ADA compliant. This is already part of our street work. Whenever we do streets, we have to rebuild the curb ramps and put in detectable warnings. Installing bicycle and pedestrian signal heads where they're needed, and where there's existing old pedestrian signals, they should be upgraded to countdown timers. Installing pedestrian and bicycle detectors and removing buttons to make it more convenient for bicycle and pedestrian traffic, and striping unmarked crossings. A couple of examples. This is the Capital City Trail crossing of Cyene Road in 2016. This is the site of Fitchburg's only known fatal bicycle accident, where Captain Sherry Maples died of her injuries in 2018, I believe. Well, no, it would have been 2017. When the Capital City Trail was rebuilt by Dane County, this is what it looks like now. Notice detectable warnings in concrete, striping, and center lines have been added to the path, making it a much safer and more visible crossing. Another example, this is on the Southwest path. This is a City of Madison crew putting in a high visibility crosswalk with green paint. And lastly, this is one that Scott will know well. This is a new path at in Fahey Fields, and this is the McGaw Park access road. And this gap has been fixed, the gravel. They went through there with some kind of utilities, probably storm sewers or water, I don't know what. That's been fixed, but notice that the path does not connect to to the multi-use path along the lacrosse fields. This is something that Scott and Joran have agreed to fix in this coming construction season. But these are the kinds of things that need to be done. There's some other examples in Terravessa and Swan Creek where paths end in sidewalks. It's not legal to ride bicycles on sidewalks in Fitchburg. There should be curb ramps there to allow bicycles to access the street instead of having to go over a curb, which is not so bad in one direction, but if you're going from the street up over the curb, that's a problem. Lastly, I wanted to mention equity. As I mentioned, bicycle facilities are not evenly distributed in the city. And when you compare the proposed greenways and the existing bike lanes in Fitchburg Healthy Neighborhoods Initiative neighborhoods with the rest of the city, you'll see that they're sorely lacking. So we need to extend the bikeways, and all urban services to all our neighborhoods. This is the map of that. This is the Jamestown area on the west, the Belmar Hills area, the Leopold and Post Road neighborhoods, and a future neighborhood that will come into Fitchburg, currently in the town, except for the southern tip, is the Southdale neighborhood. Some of these have bikeways. You can see here along Novation Drive, on the west along Williamsburg Way, but they don't have any of these proposed greenways because these are older neighborhoods, and so we need to be thinking about how we can do this, whether we can expand sidewalks to multi-use paths, whether we can put in new facilities as the opportunities present themselves. So, maintenance includes snow and ice control, vegetation management, think about mowing, but also brush trimming, also removal of downed trees, crack sealing and periodic repaving, center line paint and crossing paint where they cross streets, and litter removal. In Fitchburg, we do not do very well. We do not have a big enough budget for paint restoration. So you'll see a lot of bike lanes and crosswalks in the city have been worn away by traffic. And it's a tradition that we should change. Another thing that we need to consider are friends groups helping with this, such as the removal of dog waste and litter. Both the Crossing Condo Association and Sarah Cycling Group have offered to adopt portions, maybe more since I've been mayor, but I know of at least these two offers, and we do not have any friends groups adopting paths or greenways yet. And I think it would be much more fun to adopt a greenway than a multi-use path. This is the snow plowing map for Fitchburg for paths and sidewalks. So you can see that these greenways are maintained by the city in the winter for ice and snow removal. Some conclusions. Our paths and cycle tracks form a dense network in parts of our city that we should promote as a civic asset to attract new businesses, residents, and tourism. The cost of designation and signage of a, quote, greenway, unquote, system is modest, and the returns on health and civic pride and economic benefit could be enormous. The process starts with the Park Commission agreeing to the concept and directing park staff to work on a resolution. And I think a reasonable goal for 2021 for you all would be for the council to approve a master plan and to find funding to sign the initial 4.2 mile fish hatchery greenway from Whalen Road to the Beltline Highway frontage road. That concludes my presentation. What I'm going to do is share my screen on the open street map now, and that will allow me to navigate around Fitchburg and answer any of your questions.
Okay, Steve, before I open it up for questions for you, I'd like, since it's a new subject for us and a new topic, I'd like to give Scott a chance to kind of give us the staff perspective on this first.
Well, and certainly I did provide some comments in the, to the agenda, but again, this is, as Steve alluded to, this is a great asset and a great amenity to the city. You know, certainly I think the idea of making improvements where, you know, safety concerns are drawn to, you know, to everybody's attention. But I think just the, you know, the general bike users and those kinds of things, I'm really not in that, that circle of users, but I got to believe that there's a lot of folks that are out there that could really use this technology and take advantage of the assets that we have within the city park system and its trail system. And this, you know, with any planning effort, the first thing is to do the inventory. You know, certainly determine a goal, do an inventory, and then, you know, implement some of the recommendations within the plan. And certainly Steve sounds to me like he's interested and willing to take that initiative, and he has some support within the Bike Fitchburg community. Certainly something like this could not be undertaken by, you know, the park staff and with the capacity that we have, but, you know, when folks are interested and willing to improve the system, I think we should take full advantage of it. You know, so I guess that would be a thought that I would have. And again, you know, I just see these path systems and greenways as being an asset to the community, but I think we can certainly do a better job of promoting them and letting people know about them.
Well, so you're advocating that plans such as this would be?
Oh, I think any additions to the amenities and the services that are provided through Park and Rec, and I think the park system the path system is one of the amenities that, you know, we need to, you know, highlight and promote, and certainly if there's safety issues and the things that are identified where we can make improvements, I think that's, you know, that's always a good thing. But yeah, you know, and again, you know, to create a master plan and implementation and all of those kinds of things is, you know, with capacity, if we have a partner from the public, which Steve is willing and interested to do, I think it's certainly worth the effort. That's for sure.
Isn't it just a really more of a method to formalize a maintenance schedule and upgrades that
Well,
would make it more in compliance with modern design standards?
Certainly, I think.
It's really simply like road systems.
Right. But I think just to, you know, bring attention to them and identify them and call them greenways and those kinds of things to, you know, like marketing and those, you know, we've got a system out there. I think we should take full advantage of that system and promote it and those kinds of things, along with, you know, we can always improve and do better and fix things. I think this would be great. You know, we have to be realistic about the capacity of what we can do, but certainly with Steve and Bike Fitchburg, they seem, you know, this is their you know, their part or their commitment and investment in the community, and they're just asking the parks to kind of be a vehicle to promote it to the community, which, you know, that's a win-win as far as I can see.
Okay, why don't we open it up for questions and comments for both Patrick and Scott?
Yep.
I noticed you had your hand up first, so start it
Yep.
up.
A few questions. Steve, on your large map candidate greenways in Fitchburg, I'm not sure if I caught this correctly. Did you say that the purple is the regional and the blue is the local networks right now?
Correct.
Okay. And on page 11, it shows the Traceway Drive crossing right there. Did you say that elephant tracks, I'm not familiar with that, is that the dashes that go across a street?
Yes, they're 12 by 12 inch squares separated by 12 inches.
Okay, and that designates a bike crossing as opposed to a straight white line all the way across means pedestrian crossing?
Well, I've seen two things, and I have not looked at the manual uniform traffic control devices to clear this up. It is clearly a bike crossing. I think it's a bicycle and pedestrian crossing. But I have also seen, for example, near Camp Randall at the intersection of Monroe and Regent Streets and Breeze Terrace, there is where the Southwest Pass crosses. They use both stripes and elephant tracks to designate that it's a bicycle and pedestrian crossing. Very frequently, where you have busy spots, you will have bicycles and separate pedestrian crossings. And then the elephant tracks mark the bike crossing and the stripes mark the pedestrian crossing.
Okay, yeah, mostly I wasn't familiar with what elephant tracks were. Okay, then,
They're just coming into use.
yeah, okay. And then I'll jump a few pages ahead to the Capital City Trail crossing there. The improved version there on page 17 where it shows the yellow stripes down the middle of the path.
Mhm.
A few Public Works directors ago, I made a suggestion that some of the multi-use pedestrian bike paths in Fitchburg have center line stripes on them. This one, of course, Capital City belongs to Dane County. And the response was it was too expensive to do that. So assuming that it's may be still considered too expensive to put a stripe down the middle of all the Fitchburg paths, I was wondering if another alternative that I thought of might be agreeable to you and the group. If when a multi-use path bike trail like this crosses a road, if just on each side of the road, it might have a center line for whatever, 10, 20, 30 feet, something like this, and those bicycle profiles painted on there, maybe not. But just something to kind of remind people, at least as they cross the street and then start heading down a multi-use trail, to remind them to try to stay to the right so that people can pass them from behind. Would that be a cheaper and acceptable?
Well, I
Signage?
appreciate the suggestion, but these things are highly regulated
I see.
by the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices. And so, like the new stretches where the Badger goes over McKee Road on the bridge, and the new Capital City, and we will see this on the Cannonball and Military Ridge when they're reconstructed after the sewer project. Center lines will be applied.
Oh, okay.
And because they're standard and required. You do not have to go back and do old paths, but when you redo paths and when you build paths new, that they will have center lines on them. So, but the cost of striping on a new path or a rebuilt path is a tiny part of the project. And that's not where we need refreshing of the paint. If you paint them, they're once and done until you grind up the asphalt to repave. Where we need to refresh our paint is at where the paths cross the streets and the motor vehicles wear out the crosswalks.
Okay, so it's really the edges then, right, of the path on the road surface?
Yep.
Okay.
Any comments or questions from our Zoom participants?
I have one question,
Go ahead.
David. Thank you, Steve. I find this very, very interesting. Two questions. Are there other adjacent communities like the city of Madison, Monona, Verona, Oregon, that are in the process of pursuing this concept of the greenways? Two, it seems to me it would be helpful to also focus on safe routes to schools, and that if you were to highlight where the schools are, we could kind of reinforce the idea that perhaps this is something that is appropriate and to be encouraged. That's all.
Agreed. So when I got inspired to say we should be bragging about this, right? I would say, well, what do you call these things? And I thought of famous greenways like Minneapolis's Midtown Greenway, a depressed former rail line, the New York City's High Line, which is an elevated former rail track, and Atlanta's Beltway, which is a former belt line around Atlanta that used to be support rail, and all those rails have been removed, and now it's being worked on as a bicycle and pedestrian asset. And down there, it's causing like crazy economic development, people putting ice cream shops and apartment buildings and things along this asset because it's so attractive and valued. With respect to your second, so that's how the greenway, we don't have to call them greenways. And as I say, the Cannonball Path, the Military Ridge Path are already greenways by this definition. They're just not titled greenways. But I thought of, and I'm open to changing this. This is a proposal and needs public input like yours. But I thought that calling it a greenway system and calling each of them greenways was a uniform and recognizable thing that could be done. With respect to your second idea about safe routes to school, this is this, am I still sharing? Yeah. This is this, what I'm calling the Stoner Prairie Greenway, from the two Verona schools north into, along the Lacey Heights neighborhood and into the Seminole Hills, the Seminole Forest neighborhood. So that's an example, and it clearly shows how we've got safe routes to schools with respect to those schools. I'm going to zoom over to the other side of the city, not that far. This is Terra Vesta, and what I'm calling the Terra Vesta Greenway, which is this thing, and you can see it's got a side trail that leads to the new Oregon Elementary School and serves this entire neighborhood. Now this is a smart code neighborhood, and these streets are designed to be bicycle ways. They're narrow, they're short, they are signed for 25 miles an hour. They should be signed for 20. You'd be crazy to drive more than 20 miles an hour on these streets. And then you have the connection on what I'm calling the Lacey Greenway back to Uptown, where other residents in the Oregon School District would live and would be sending their kids to this school. So definitely this is a key part of it. Going back one question, I think that the importance and the beauty of this proposal is that all the hard work, like building paths, striping them, signalizing intersections, that's all done. And all the maintenance is being done all the time. I have one of these outside my back door, and in the morning when I go out, the Fish Hatcher Greenway will be plowed behind my house because it's the way that the plow crews get to the rest of the city from the Public Works garage. But all of our greenways are already snow plowed after every snowfall. Not like Madison where it has to be 3 inches. So that expense is all built in.
I had just a couple of questions too, if you don't mind. I guess one, I was curious if you had any insight into, I realize you're just bringing this to the parks now as the process dictates, but I would be curious to hear what neighborhood residents do think of this, because I think Fitchburg is fantastic that we have access to several several bike trails. And I would be curious how residents would feel of promoting local neighborhood trails, because I do think that residents like to use these trails for walking their dogs, teaching their kids to ride bicycles, not necessarily accounting for it being a bike trail with bikers that may be moving at a faster pace. And then two other comments, just the second one is for the expense. It does sound like then one expense that we would definitely be hit would be signage. And I do have a hard time swallowing an expense of signage when I know that we have other facilities like roofs that really desperately need the funding. And so I try to balance the payoff versus the reward. And I don't know if signage, once again, always want to brag about the city of Fitchburg and the amenities that it offers, but I would question as to what the payoff is for an additional expense of just kind of highlighting with new signage. And then my last comment is just in regards to equity, I do somewhat think of bicycling as an activity that requires somewhat of an investment from a bicycle, where I once again just have this balance of, are we devoting funds to the right activities, or would it be best to add more play equipment within neighborhoods, within the healthy neighborhoods, parks? And just kind of questioning as to, once again, are we spending funds appropriately that we're getting the most value out of the expense?
Thank you, Sarah, for those questions. First of all, for traffic, I've written notes of traffic signage and equity. With respect to traffic, so you may have heard of the Portland bicycle user classification. You've got the 1% who are the strong and confident, and down to the no how, no way, the 33%, the 60% are the interested, but cautious. So I am one of the strong and confident bicyclists, and commuters and athletes and bicycle messengers do not use these paths. They use the streets. And so there are exceptions. For example, no one bikes on John Nolan Drive. Everybody bikes on the Cap City Trail. But by and large, I bike on Fish Hatchery Road, and that won't change with the new bike and bus lanes. The longer the distance that a trail goes, the more it can support recreation and transportation. So we have very short trails, but they're not of interest to anybody for biking unless they connect to longer trails. So you see, for example, the trails around McKee Farms Park connect into the neighborhoods, but people are not going to be using these trails for exercise, although they may use them to access the splash pad. So I think that you will find that the Greenway concept is really, and let's see, well, I don't want to unshare this and share a different thing, but my opening slide showed the Greenway near my nephew's house in Charleston, South Carolina. And it's a fairly long thing. It's a former rail line, but dog walkers, baby carriages, rollerbladers, and bicyclists all use it. And so I definitely agree that we need the neighborhood input, but I know a neighbor 2 doors down who complained vehemently. She's now moved someplace else, but she complained vehemently about the path being put behind the berm and the fence behind her house. She thought it would be a terrible thing. And when it went in, she was one of the people who used it every day to walk her dogs. And that's that fish hatchery path that during the summer, our production mowers use that path to get to the other parks in the city 4 times a day. So there are motor vehicles there for maintenance, but she was out there walking her dog every day. But I agree, we need that. Lastly, with the equity thing, I totally agree that bicycling has a reputation for being an elite recreational sport. However, if you talk to some folks of color who are in the bicycle community, they say it's not that there are nobody Black or Hispanic bikes, it's that they're unseen. Very often they are biking for transportation. If you sit at the corner of Fish Hatchery and the Beltline, you will see many people riding over the Beltline on old beater bikes to their jobs in the Stewart Street Industrial Park area, east of Fish Hatchery Road and north of Post Road. So there are a lot of folks that really depend on, for example, the Badger State Trail to get from Allied Drive down to jobs along McKee Road and the Verona Road. So I think that, and Free Bikes for Kids is going to be giving away 2,021 bikes this year through community groups. And these are for kids that can't afford bikes, but they're going to get bikes, locks, helmets, and bike licenses from Free Bikes for Kids so that they can get around, even though they might not be able to afford a bike. So let's see, I have not addressed signage. We haven't talked about how to pay for this and how much it's going to cost. It could be on the levy. I'm thinking, it should be certainly under $10,000 to do the length of Fish Hatchery Road with all the signs, maybe under $2,000, but I've got to find that out. But we have partners. Bike Fitchburg is your city, the city's partner, along with the Chamber of Commerce. We had in 2019, we signed an agreement, council passed a resolution, Chamber of Commerce passed a resolution of their board and Bike Fitchburg's board to join as Wisconsin Active Together Community Partnership. And Angela Kinderman, the executive director of the chamber, is very excited about this. And I'm hoping to schedule this presentation for their board. And it could be that room tax dollars could cover this. It could be Nelson Knowles stewardship funds. It could be donations. Looking at recent initiatives like the splash pad and the dog park, and now the accessible playground in the future, these are the kinds of things that people get behind. And so it doesn't necessarily have to come out of some fixed sum game that Scott is dealing with in his budget every year. Did that answer your questions, Sarah?
It did, thank
Is there someone else that had some question here? Okay, what I wanted to say was, I think, just kind of move things along. We had good discussion. I think really what we need to do as far as action item is to determine whether this is a plan that we would like to pursue and have staff begin initiating that. And also getting the city council on board as well. Or whether this needs more discussion. So I guess I'm kind of leaving it open for you guys. There's a lot of details, and we could spend all night probably talking about some of the aspects of what should be in a plan or how it should be managed. But I think that's what we need to determine at this point is, do we want a plan? And if we won't, then I think we can determine what should be in it and how it should be structured. So, that's what I'm throwing out. I don't want to spend all night on this, but I think we did have some good discussion, and I think it brought out a lot of issues. Oh, Steve, I have to ask you though, where did the concept of greenway, to me that's kind of confusing because I always pictured a greenway as being a grassy area that's used for stormwater drainage or something like that. And I realize you're using that terminology that, because you're more involved with this bicycling, but I've never heard that reference before.
Okay, I give you a couple of, I thought to myself, I better run this down and make sure I'm not calling it something that symbolizes Nazi oppression or something, And so there's a good article on Wikipedia, the article about greenways. That's where that definition came from. There are many, as I mentioned, for example, Minneapolis calls their vegetated former rail trails that prohibit motor vehicles greenways. And we also have existing usage of that term here in Fitchburg. At McKee Farms Park, connecting to Richardson Street is the Schumann Greenway. And it contains a multi-use path and a bicycle and pedestrian facility. From along the Pines, along the northern edge of Tower Hill neighborhood is the Tower Hill Greenway.
Right.
That connects Fish Hatchery Road into McKee Farms Park. So it's absolutely consistent with those existing uses, and you will find those on maps of Fitchburg.
Okay. Patrick?
On the same question then, what kind of a bike trail or multi-use path is not a greenway? Because you mentioned even the Lacey Greenway in Uptown, just on the west side of Highway 14, is also the Lacey Greenway. So what kind of path is not a greenway?
Bike lane?
On street?
Yep. A sidewalk? The areas in front of urban buildings that are built up to the sidewalk, where all you have is a terrace. Now, some of those areas are designated in this proposed system, but only as connectors, bottlenecks, if you will. For example, we call the Cannonball Path and not the Cannonball Greenway, but it is signed. So there's two concepts. One is a greenway concept, and that doesn't require it to be signed to be part of the local bicycle network according to the mapping criteria of OpenStreetMap. It has to be signed. That's how it gets its blue or violet highlighting, and that's why most of those blue lines should not be there right now. They're only proposed. So you could call it a path. I'll point out that for those who are not aware, our paths are called paths when they are locally maintained and do not require a trail pass. And they're called trails if they are maintained by the county or the DNR and they do require a trail pass. And that naming system is agreed upon by Fitchburg and Madison and part of the Dane County Bicycle Wayfinding Manual that was developed a couple of years ago, just to kind of guide people, say, do I need a trail pass for here? And you'll also notice that the paths get plowed right away, and the trails, the DNR and county arrange volunteers, and so they don't get plowed right away. So you could call them paths, but marketing is important, and so this is part of a marketing thing.
Both of those
That's why the chamber's interested in it, for marketing the city.
both of those, it sounds like paths or trails would probably be considered greenways, right?
Well, suppose you put in a new subdivision, you want to name it a street. You want to name a street, you have to decide whether I'm going to call it street or drive or avenue or ridge as part of the name of the street. And that's what we're using greenway for here, as part of the name of the thoroughfare. So I'm not saying that the Cannonball Path is not a greenway with a lowercase g, but I'm proposing to name the trail along Fish Hatchery Road as the Fish Hatchery Greenway and put that on the street sign, GRWY or something like that.
Okay.
So I'm distinguishing between what we're naming these individual facilities and the general concept of greenway. Yes, Cannonball Path is a greenway. Yes, we could call the Fish Hatchery thing the Fish Hatchery Path. But I do want to emphasize a unified system, and it gets you lots and lots of places. I did make a quick list of the kinds of things that we have on the Fish Hatchery Greenway. It connects to Madison, Metro Transit, commercial centers including Fitchburg Ridge, Hatchery Hill, and Yarmouth Crossing. Parks connects to the Nine Springs Golf Course, the Nevin Springs Fish Hatchery, McKee Farms Park, and the Splash Pad, the Sunny Side Dog Park. It connects to the Capital City State Trail, connects to 4 east-west proposed greenways, Tower Hill, Sherrill, Lacey, and Nobel. It connects to employment centers like Chapel Valley, Forsyth Downs, Fitchburg Center, Fitchburg Tech Campus and Techlands. It connects the City Hall, the library and the Senior Center, the Public Works Garage, 2 of our 4 hotels, lots of restaurants, ice cream, coffee, and beer, and a handful of residential subdivisions are all along that and could all be sources and destinations of users, be they walkers or bike riders or joggers or what have you.
Scott, I may have gotten ahead of myself when I mentioned this as being an action item as to whether we want to plan or not, but is that kind of what you had in mind with when they added this on into the agenda?
Yeah.
If I were king, I would say I'd like to see a motion to direct staff to proceed with the planning of the greenway system. And of course, that wouldn't involve any money yet, wouldn't involve council approval, but it gives them leave to go do some work on it and start answering these questions and maybe come up with a public engagement plan, that kind of thing.
And maybe if I might, even before we get into that, we draft a resolution with this proposed plan and get it to the council and then refer back so the council is on board too, that we're taking this planning initiative, physically doing it, but also promoting what we're trying to do as an informational thing for the council, and then they would direct it back to the park commission, and we'd begin to start to work on it.
Yeah, may require, Board of Public Works, or the Public Works Director, I should say, and his subordinates to work with us on that plan too, if that's something that's, this body wishes to pursue.
So I guess if the action tonight would be that the park commission wants us to proceed and ask staff to draft a resolution that would go to the council as the same, and then come back and then get approved by the council, and then work would continue.
Okay, there you have it. If there's any desire to pursue this, you need a motion to approve it, or if you're not comfortable with that, you could put it on this agenda for next week and discuss it in more detail, but I'm more inclined to either vote it up or down. So, anybody on our Zoom group wish to jump in with either a motion or something? If not, we'll...
I will, advocate for a motion. I would move this forward, having, this directed to council attention as well as advanced to the planning department for more details.
Okay. Is there a second?
I second.
Second? Very good. Discussion on the motion? Hearing none, voting on the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carried. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, I thank you very much. You might not have been expecting this long a discussion or presentation, and I really appreciate your support and your attention this evening. Thank you very much on behalf of Mike Fitchburg.
Thank you, Steve.
Yep. All right, let's move on to our second item. B, North Fishhatchery Hub Community Park classification. And it looks like, isn't seed also related to that, Scott?
Steve, no.
I mean, it's,
This is.
you're asking for a zoning classification. Isn't this first one also that?
No, this is more of an official park classification to classify the Nine Springs Hub as a community park. That's what this next item is. Item number B, which is basically what we're proposing here, that we officially designate the North Fish Hatchery Road Hub Community Park. You know, and we've been kind of working functioning as a community park, but this is kind of the official classification of this area being a community park. And if the park commission is good with this, I would draft up a resolution to go to the council and then be referred back to officially classify this neighborhood as a community park in our park classifications.
What's the difference between B and C, though?
Yeah, C is the zoning of a park and rec district. There's certain zoning requirements for the park and rec district. So on item C, we're asking for a modification of that park and rec zoning district.
And that needs approval by the planning commission then?
And actually, it'll come from the planning commission and then come back to parks
Okay,
and through the council,
okay,
right? And that'll go through the same process that, you know, basically it'll be referred out and back to the park commission and the plan commission. But we'll just take item B to begin with, I guess.
That'd
And-
probably be referred to the planning commission as well, since they usually approve rezonings.
Oh, yeah, that one will, but the park classification, I don't think would go to the plan commission. But we'll let the council decide if they want the park or the plan commission to weigh in on it when it gets to the council. They can certainly refer it back to, I would think, the Parks Department or Park Commission, but they could certainly refer it to the planning commission if they so wish.
Yeah, because I think it requires public hearing and people notified within 500 feet, property owners, if there's a zoning change. I could be wrong on that, but
Yeah, that we'll let the planning department kind of steer that ship. But like I say, the first one is classifying the neighborhood as a community park.
sure, okay. Go ahead, Patrick?
The classification as a community park would be similar to where I believe the Nine Springs Golf Course was designated community park because we only have one golf course. Sunnyside Dog Park was classified as a community park because we only have one. I don't know if there's any others besides McKee and McGaw,
No.
which have always been community parks.
Yep, you're right. It's Sunnyside Park, and then the Nine Springs Golf Course, which this is contiguous to. And we've actually been, you know, working with it as a community park, but this is just an official classification for that area.
You mean the hub or Nine Springs Golf Course?
The hub.
Okay, the Nine Springs Golf Course is already considered a community park, right?
Yep, and this is contiguous to it, so
Yes.
we're just kind of adding this hub to it.
Yeah, okay. On something that Mark mentioned, I don't recall if there were any neighborhood meetings, hearings, anything like that to change the designation for Nine Springs Golf Course and Sunnyside Dog Park?
No, I think that's really kind of the preview of the park commission and common council
Yeah.
for approval.
Yeah, I don't remember any meetings
Yeah,
unless you.
we probably wouldn't have public hearings for that.
Okay.
But I'm not aware of the public hearings that would be required by the plan commission for a zoning modification.
I'd make a motion to approve or to have the North Fish Hatchery Hub classified as a community park, as I think it meets your definition that you've provided in the park plan of serving people within a larger area and providing facilities within a larger range.
I'll second that.
Okay. Discussion on the motion. Oh, did we get a second? Oh, yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Yes.
Did.
Discussion on the motion. Hearing none, voting on the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carried. Item C, which is the North Fish Hatchery Hub Proposal PR Zoning District Modification.
And what this modification would allow for is mainly in setbacks from the street right away. The community The building that we're looking to build in this area would not meet the current setbacks of the Park and Rec zoning district, so we're looking to modify that district so it would allow a shorter setback, so the building can be constructed. Shorter, closer to the building, or closer to the road.
But we don't have any official paperwork. This is just telling staff to
Well,
draft the paperwork necessary for a rezoning.
Yep, and it's kind of a heads up, and certainly we want to make sure that you're on board with it, but then Wade would run it through the plan commission, and then the park commission would see it again.
Okay.
What's the current zoning?
It's park rec zoning, it's a PR.
No, that's what you want, right?
No, that's what it's currently zoned, but there's setback requirements in the PR zoning, as I understand. And this building we wouldn't be able to meet the setback requirements, so we're looking to modify that PR zoning to allow for a shorter setback.
Oh, so it's a waiver then it's the same zoning now, and what you're asking, that's not changed. It's a waiver of setback requirements?
It's a modification of that zoning district regarding setbacks.
Oh, is this the only place that has?
No, it would go through all park and rec
Okay, yeah,
zoning, which
this-
park and rec zone properties, which really what that allows for is additional space for structures and those kinds of things within our park system. So it'll provide some additional flexibility in the other lands that are zoned PR.
Yeah, I'm doubting, unless you have any in mind that might affect any other places. It really, for this purpose, it's really just affecting the hub here, right?
But certainly it allows flexibility for the future in this park and rec zoning district.
Sure.
I guess I was a little confused. I guess I was thinking that you were asking for rezoning.
I did.
No,
So
it's
you're just looking for a setback change?
it's currently zoned PR, and we're looking to modify the PR zoning to allow for a smaller setback so that the building could be constructed closer to the right-of-way.
Wouldn't you think that would be a little premature? I mean, we don't even have a design yet. We don't know whether a setback would even be needed.
And
Well,
We're
in-
talking
in-
setback from the street, though,
Well,
right?
but even independent of whether the building goes there or not, this modification is gonna allow for future flexibility in the PR district. And you're right, it hasn't been approved or built or anything like that, but we just this is one of the things that would need to be adjusted if the building, if it's decided to build the building there.
You're looking for setback change from the street. You want it closer to the
But
street.
that's my understanding, yeah.
Got it. Okay.
so we don't have any details in our packet about what the current setback requirement is. Do you have anything in mind of what you would request for so many feet back setback?
No, I would rely on the planning department to provide that documentation.
Are you aware if that elderly housing building had that same request? I mean, did they set that closer to the
Well,
street too?
I'm sure
Kinda
that,
looks like it, but I don't.
well, I'm thinking that was zoned different than PR.
Oh, okay.
That wasn't zoned park and rec.
Okay, well, I guess
I have a question, Scott, can you, I'm confused. Would this apply to other parks that are community parks as well?
This would apply for all properties that are zoned park and rec, PR. That's a certain zoning.
This seems to be a broad reach, in my estimation. You're not talking about what it would be. I think there's a reason you have zoning requirements and setbacks. This change that opens everything up, I can see being something that could affect residential ownership. I would think there's more study, more detail. This is, for me, too vague.
Well, I thought it was a little strange without a design too. I don't know if it's appropriate to request something that we don't really know what it would be yet, but Patrick?
Yeah, changing the setback for all the city parks all over, it probably doesn't matter now. As you say, Scott, maybe something in the future would use this. I'm thinking in whatever the other circumstance, in somewhere in zoning setback requirements, I don't even know what it is about, but there's the term zero setback in other classifications. I would suggest that maybe specifically for this hub, there might instead be a request for a waiver for the hub property and leave the setback requirements as they are for all other PR zoning.
Yeah, that's all he's
And-
requested. That's what this is about.
Well,
No, this
Let's not
would
make
change it.
a blanket.
This would change it for
no,
all.
this would make it a blanket, right? So what I would do is I could, we don't need to take action on this tonight. I guess I'm bringing it before the Park Commission as an informational item, and certainly I think the comments that you provide, I could offer that to planning, and they're, like I say, they're gonna be the ones that are gonna be drafting the zoning modification and all of that, and then it'll come back to the Park Commission, referred from the council, so those are good questions that I could provide to Wade and the planning department and let them know that we're, and I apologize, I don't know the details of it, and again, it's not an official action item, it's just kind of an informational, I wanted to have it on the discussion and action so that we could discuss it, but if anything, at the end of the day, it's kind of a heads up that this is gonna be coming.
Yeah, I understand your efforts to increase the buildable area of the property, but and I understand that, but I don't know, because we don't have a design as to what that would be.
And again, Wade would certainly be here next, when it comes back to the council or back to the Park Commission for further clarification and those kinds of things.
I'm thinking too that to change the PR all over to be a lower setback, lesser setback, might be a problem. Just think of an example somewhere in some park where, let's say, then that would allow, let's say, a shelter to be built really, really close to the road. That might be objectionable. So I would suggest that asking a waiver specifically for the hub might be more likely to be approved.
Well, and that doesn't, right, the zoning, it doesn't require us
No, it
to
doesn't
do that.
require.
It just provides additional flexibility that we can if we'd like, but
But I'm thinking in other park situations, buildings in other parks, we may want them, even if it is, cut and dried by the rules that all the buildings have to be back from the street. That may be desirable in all other situations. This is a very urban area right along Traceway for this hub building and everything, where tight space and close
urban
proximity
form.
between buildings and sidewalks and streets and everything, this may be an exception.
Yep, and that really, it's the urban form is what
Yeah.
we're trying to do there.
Yeah.
So those are all good questions and good comments that I can take back, that's for sure.
I mean, it seems like if you wanted to change that in the PR zoning, that would require an ordinance change versus, like Patrick was saying, if it's targeted just to that property, then it wouldn't be as comprehensive.
I'll let planning, that's kind of their forte, and they, with zoning, they can usher it however they think it would be, appropriate.
You want that to be just sort of a
Yeah, we can.
heads up informational thing at this point?
Sure, there doesn't need to be any official action on this. I could just share with Wade the comments that were received, and then he'll factor that in, and as it continues on, and you'll see it again at a future Park Commission meeting, so you'll be able to review it with those recommendations that you made included in it.
Okay. If there's any questions regarding this, feel free to cut in here.
I'll just add one thing, is that, Scott, I don't know that we necessarily need to be opposed to a zoning, a change to the entire zoning code, but it would be good to know what that change might be. Are we talking 20 feet to 10 feet or, 50 feet to 5 feet, just so we have some frame of reference. But I appreciate your point about adding flexibility, because ultimately, from a planning and design standpoint, the closer certain features can be moved to a property line without having that setback, the more flexibility it gives you to actually use interior space in the park. So I think it's worth us as a commission looking at that zoning change, definitely, but having a frame of reference like what that change might be would be helpful info.
Certainly, thank you, Chris. I could even, send that information to everybody, in the next couple days or week, just to kind of bring clarification to it.
Fair enough. Okay. Hearing that, then why don't we move on to the next agenda item, which is the 5D Park and Open Space Plan 2015 to 2020 Goals and Action Items. And as you see in your packet, we received the first few pages. It was a suggestion that of Scott that we spend maybe a half an hour on this.
Well, and maybe in the interest of time, I guess what I wanted to do is certainly recognize that the Park Commission and members of the Park Commission are interested in updating the Park and Open Space Plan. And I think it is going to take, short of, we have no dollars to hire someone to come in and do it. It's really going to be an exercise that the Park Commission can certainly get involved in. And like you say, we could have it on the agenda, as a action or discussion item every month. But what I was thinking is the first thing that I could ask the Park Commissioners to review are the goals, and certainly we want to update how we've done on the action items. So if anything else, I think this is just going to kind of draw attention to an update of the plan and the goals and action items that we have included in the plan.
Yeah, it would be my suggestion that you would add any plan revisions that you would want to see in there, and that we take it page by page, because otherwise we're going to be jumping all over the place.
Right.
Not
Right.
accomplishing anything.
Right.
I mean, that's how it was done in the past. We've had, usually staff recommends changes on each page, and we would take one page at a time until we got it done.
Well, and certainly, like I mentioned, with the interest that Park Commission members have shown in this, I'd hope that they would, have some thoughts and ideas on what they're looking to include as goals and those kinds of things. So it is beginning to start to discuss the update of the plan. I know there has been concern in the past that, we lose grant funding, which certainly the Park and Open Space Plan is a mechanism or is a requirement when you're applying for grants. But certainly if we have a project that we're looking to apply for grant funding, we can amend our current plan to include that project. So, there doesn't need to be certainly it needs to get done, but we don't need to get it done in the next quarter or whatever it might be.
Right. What are you looking for today, though?
I guess it's just an introduction. Certainly, if Park Commission members have thoughts or ideas, they can certainly share them with me. And like I say, maybe I'll take a look at it. If anything else, we can certainly go through the action items on the things that we've accomplished to just kind of move it forward, and just maybe spend 20 or 25 minutes as we roll through it each month. I'll put it on the agenda for each coming month.
Yeah, rather than a prolonged discussion, though, wouldn't it be more productive if there was some
Certainly.
any input given to you, and then perhaps at the next meeting, it would be highlighted on this sheet
Yep,
somehow.
yep. And like I say, if park commission members want to give me suggestions or ideas, we could certainly include it, and then that would be part of the discussion for next month. And like I say, I can go through and kind of figure out the action items that we've accomplished, and we can update that and kind of roll through it
Okay.
month
Well,
by month.
then you got the floor.
So is that agreeable by the park commission members, or do they have thoughts or ideas? Open.
I have a question. So I'm understanding, we're here now on this agenda item, and we can go over it in various ways, but didn't we had a guest come in and speak, Mr. Stevens, and he has patiently sat through a lot of other agenda items because we were gonna be able to discuss his remarks specifically. So even if we agree that now, yes, starting next month, we're gonna in earnest begin to do sections of the comprehensive plan, I would hope we would at least start here with Mr. Stevens.
Yeah, we heard his comments, so sure.
I mean, because I think our chair and Patrick, Mr. Cheney had questions and wanted to interact with Mr. Stevens, but then the decision was Mr. Stevens needed to wait. So I don't want him to wait any longer if he doesn't have to.
I didn't have any questions at this point. I just wanted to suggest that since this is an agenda item, that we apply Michael Stevens' comments and David Gorder's comments to 5D rather than under public appearance non-agenda items, because this is an agenda item. And since we are on 5D, yeah, now we can discuss and ask questions and whatever we want to do.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with that.
I guess I'll continue then. A comment from me, when I looked at this in our packet right here, and I kind of presume this is the same as was seen before. Soon as I saw that beer garden sign, I thought, oh, no. That I attended the neighborhood meetings of, by McKee there to listen to the neighbors on this. And I thoroughly agree with Michael Stevens' comments and David Gorder's comments on this. I would even suggest that somewhere in the text of all of this goals, action items, and the plan and everything, that we might even feel like inserting a phrase that says, comma, not to include a beer garden. And we might even include another comma, also not to turn over public park shelters to a private enterprise.
Well, let's not hammer away on this beer garden.
That was just my
I think
reaction.
we got beat up enough.
As soon as I saw that beer garden sign again, oh, geez, no, let's not do that again.
Well, it is a form of a social gathering.
We can take it out, too.
Oh, certainly, no doubt.
Yeah, Scott, I have a question. You use reference to the sociability, seams, and placemaking. I'm unfamiliar in the professional literature of planning of the idea of seams. Where does that come from?
I think that was just kind of our creative way that.
This is a Fitchburgism, and it's not something that's a canon in terms of professional planning of landscape design or architecture or city planning or urban planning. We're making up our own definitions, and I think we'd be on solid ground if we reference some national organizations like the National Recreation and Parks Association. They have complete literature on various aspects of parks, and for us to be making it up, I think, is faulty.
And I guess I could refer to the discussion that we had tonight with that I think connection of trails and things like that are a fabric of the city of Fitchburg. So I think the connection of park systems to you know, to
Yeah,
to
but,
businesses and those kinds of things
my point-
seem to
my
be
point is
seem to be
use
relative.
Jargon, use definitions that are accepted in these professions. Don't invent something like seams. Yes, connections are very important. It's in the literature. Use that. Don't have this Fitchburgism as to what we are. And I've had discussions with you, and I find it offensive that you say that you do not have benchmarks or peers or other cities. Fitchburg is not that unique. I'm sorry.
My understanding, David, is that this idea of themes was created by our planning staff member, Wade Thompson.
Well, I think it's dangerous. And I would go back to not trying to reinvent the wheel. Look at national organizations, look at exemplary parks, and try to mold something that is germane to Fitchburg, being within the, we have wonderful examples of, for planning in terms of the E-Way with Phil Lewis, who spent 15 years on that. We have excellent examples of stewardship, which would be Alda Leopold. It's countless. Henry Royce with the Ice Age Trail. We don't have to make it up within our own planning department. I think this is a faulty approach.
Well, and certainly, Dave, the invitation is there that you can you know take a look at it and give us recommendations and thoughts and ideas that you have. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for your thoughts and ideas. This is just what we came up with, and if you've got other thoughts and ideas that you'd like to recommend, we're all ears. That's for sure.
No, and again, I'm interested in doing that, but I'm trying to point out that there are more orthodox methods for coming up with what your standards are, what your goals are, what your values are, not just to be looking inward and making it up. Again, look at the professional literature. Seems maybe your coined term for connection and connectivity. Well, use that.
I'm not sure what making it up means, but I think we can make it whatever we want. It's our plan. It's the city's plan. If we think it's appropriate, it should be in there. If it's not, then we won't.
That's probably true, but I do agree with the point that David is making.
I mean, I don't want to make this into a lot of heartburn and heartbreak, but, I think if we just discuss it calmly and rationally, I think that's, just get through this. That would be an accomplishment that I think would be good for the city and good for us too.
And
I have a question.
I'm looking for input. That's for sure.
I have a question.
Yeah.
May I ask, Mr. Stevens, is there anything else you'd like to add to the comments you made?
Yes, there was, I had to keep it to the 3 minutes, which I was advised. And having sat through the previous discussion, it probably would have been better to put it there. I think there are two broad issues that I tried to bring out. One, the system failed with the beer garden controversy. It was an issue of transparency and good government, where there were the notion of putting a tavern in the park.
This plan is more than just a beer garden. It was just an idea. It wasn't even developed by us. It was a group of people that came in and said, "Is this something a good idea?" And discuss it. That's how it was
Actually,
approached.
that's not the case.
I don't want to spend every meeting getting beat up on beer gardens. I think that's unproductive, and I don't think it's going to accomplish putting together a 5-year plan or update. I just think it's just so unproductive. We get it, we get it.
Well, do we? I wanted to at least hear Mr. Stevens out just a little bit more. Of everything I've heard other city residents talk about, I feel like whenever I open up that plan and I see that picture that says beer garden, my recommendation will be whether when we talk about that page and making changes is put a different picture in there. And
Take that picture out.
recognize that there were problems that occurred that I think we're unlikely to find another location where it makes any more sense than it did where those neighbors objected. And I'm not trying to disparage anyone's past efforts. And Mr. Stevens worked, within his neighborhood framework to see that things were kept a certain way as neighbors to the park. So I just hope we can hear just a little bit more right now from Mr. Stevens.
Right. The 2 points was, one, I don't want to, likewise, I don't want to beat the issue of that proposal. As Mr. Vivian pointed out, that's in the past. I just hope that we learn from that experience, and I hope there's transparency. The concern was at every stage, the word beer and alcohol was never mentioned. I hope in the future, whether it's at McKee or McGaw or the Hub, which is now a community park, and if this section 2A would permit a proposal for a beer garden at the Hub, because you've just determined that's a community park. Make sure that the people in that community know we're talking about alcohol sales, unless we get rid of that and adopt the other idea. But the second thing that I didn't see through the plan is I would hope that in your planning you try to avoid doing no harm or reducing amenities by adopting that. And I think there are 4 audiences that rise to the top. Our first concern was children, that anything you do in a park that you're not going to be adversely impacted children. Secondly, anything you do not reduce current usage of that park by current citizens. The third thing is you do not give any unfair advantage that would disadvantage a current Fitchburg business, a tax-paying Fitchburg business. And fourth, you be careful about creep that might impact neighbors. And here we talk about a situation that the City of Madison Park System, which did, I have to use the word beer garden, I'm sorry, but did add a beer garden, and it was not going to impact the neighbors, and there was going to be no amplification. And after 2 years, the proprietors said, we're not making money here. We need live entertainment. We need amplification. Would you please change that? And they had already invested in and established that. This doesn't just apply to beer gardens. It's criteria that I would hope that the Parks Commission would look at every new initiative that they hope to put in place. So transparency and do no harm. That's what I'm asking for.
Okay.
I do like the idea that was raised of perhaps put some language in there that nothing shall be construed as to grant additional liquor license or alcohol licenses in this plan. That's what I would have said if I had more time.
When I think this page with beer garden, you just throw the damn picture out of there, but it was just there as an example of sociable things, and I don't think anybody actually had any ideas at the time that was going to be, but it has been successfully done in other communities. But if you don't want this picture in here, I have no problem with it being deleted. I don't think Scott has any problem with it being deleted. But I do want to try to get this to become a productive meeting. And
May I add one other thing? Actually, it does say, and in rereading it, it uses the words requests for proposals for food and drink garden under 2A as one of the action items that the commission is called.
well, I think
I would
we've
hope
been
that
through
2A would be
prohibition
deleted.
many years ago, and I don't think personally that it's unholy to have a drink of alcoholic beverages at some point. And it's done in Madison successfully, it's done in Milwaukee. Maybe this park wasn't an appropriate location, but I think to suggest that nowhere in the city it's inappropriate, I think is putting blinders on and not giving people a real opportunity. I'm not here to advocate drinking for minors, and I don't think anybody would be in the right mind to suggest that something like that would be appropriate. But I do think that, I don't know, I just think it's a neat idea if it's done appropriately. And I don't think that in the case of McKee Farms Park, this park commission never had one chance to discuss it, not one, before the crowds came in. And I don't have a problem with that necessarily. I mean, if people don't want it, that's fine, but it's up to you guys. If you want it completely written out of our language, then that's your prerogative.
Well, if I can just provide some bit on that history, this plan was cited at the public meetings. The reason why the crowds came in is members of the community were pointed out, hey, it's in the plan. The Parks Commission approved this plan. This is why we did this RFP in March, and we're now holding a public meeting in December telling you what we're going to do.
And I'm respectful of your comments here.
Complicated.
I am respectful of your comments here tonight, but at some point we have to give a chance for our members to move on with this plan that consists of more than just a beer garden. I mean, it's if people want all reference to it deleted, that's certainly their prerogative. But we've given you more than adequate time to express your opinion. And again, we're all respectful of it. And I don't think there's a number of people 100% in agreement with you. So I don't, it's not falling on deaf ears. So Scott, how do you want to move on with this? We're not making very good progress.
Well, I think the discussion is all good because those are comments from the public and like I say, I invite Park Commission members to review it and adjust the goals or whatever they see fit, and I'll do the same, and we'll come to the next meeting with some adjustments and edits, and we'll work on that and take a little bit to discuss it and then move to the next.
Let's do that. And I think it would help us along too if you had any recommended changes that you felt were appropriate.
And again, I guess tonight I was just kind of introducing it, and that was kind of my proposed plan to take a look at it and ask the Park Commission members to take a look at the goals and see if they have anything to offer so that we can adjust it a bit for next time, and then we can just discuss it again.
But your objective is just to get through these first few.
I think basically the Park and Open Space Plan revolves around its goals and ideas on what they'd like to do in the next 5 years. The balance of the document is just objective information about amenities and parks and those kinds of things. So this is really the the gut of the plan, the action part of the plan.
Sure. All right. Yeah, Patrick.
I want to make a couple of general comments. I'm sorry that part of this relates to the word we were just talking about, beer garden. What I think that the process worked. It was a little bit difficult coming to it. I think I would have put that fault a lot on the proposer of the beer garden, because they probably read this plan and saw, just as Michael saw, food and drink concession. Well, you can drink beer, so that let them, that opened the door for them. I think in general, maybe we have learned that the commission maybe needs to be more vigilant on proposals and make sure that it is agreeable to our city interests, our neighborhood interests, and make sure, as it was kind of forced in, I would kind of say, to hear from the neighbors around McKee Park. I certainly valued their comments on this in the meeting that was in the shelter one day, and I think it's maybe some park commission meetings. But otherwise, the process did work. That the park commission came out against that proposal. The council didn't like it either. So I think it worked, and we just need to make sure that we hear from adjoining neighbors, especially around these major community parks. Now, if I can then switch subjects, as far as the themes right here that are suggested on page 30, I do kind of a little bit, yeah, that page right there, kind of hits me a little bit wrong when going down the line right there. The one for sports fields is McGaw Park. And it mentions only the tennis courts, baseball, softball, lacrosse, soccer, rugby fields. Well, I guess that'd be the same field. Because I mean, maybe there was somewhere else on some other page somewhere that I did read that as Wade Thompson has proposed these themes, that McGaw is not just a sports field, it is other recreation. Of course, this, as you know, is the park right next to me. I'm practically out there every day. In summer, I'm out there 5 times a day. Walking through it, going for a walk, biking through it, something like that. And in winter right now, when we talk about the very limited amount of winter sports that are available in all of our parks, McGaw Park, in the other non-active sports part, in the pretty much half of it being in the wooded hiking trails, they are busy, busy, busy. Every day there's a lot of foot traffic going there. I can see it in the snow. As soon as it snows, there's a lot of traffic. There are many people that I've seen with snowshoes. There's cross-country skiing. Somebody with a fat tired bike has ridden through there. Lots of hiking through there, just nice quiet trails with, this will set some people off, but lots of honeysuckle along the side. So I know some people don't like that, but there's a lot of people walking on the trails who like that. It is so quiet. It keeps the wind down. It is quiet and calm, and that is exactly what people have been doing in the winter as well as last summer. And they just really like the hiking trails. So there's all kinds of winter activity, especially right now, going on in McGaw Park in the wooded hiking trail system. And as far as this sports field theme, it's more than just a sports field park.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think these signature theme parks were kind of designed to create so we don't have every park being everything, if you know what I mean. Certainly, McGaw Park performs different functions, but it also has the field lighting and the parking lots and all of those kinds of things. So it's really kind of set up as our athletic field location.
Yeah, I recognize that, yeah. But it's really a sort of a half and half park, because it is so much active sports, and it is half of the park is passive sports as well.
I still say it would be easier if you would have your staff recommendations. We go just page by page, and if we have, head nodding, that seems to indicate everything's okay, we'll move on. Otherwise, if something's controversial, we'll vote on it. But I think it's a lot easier, that way we're not bouncing around from
nope.
one
I-
end to the other end, and everybody has a chance to offer some changes. And
Time to
I
move
just think
on. Yep.
from just to accomplish it in this larger group,
Right.
it just would be easier to do.
Enough said on that item. Yep. Let's move to the next one, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Do it next meeting.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And, I think, that holds true for everyone here, that, put your suggested revisions or whatever, and when we're on that page, we'll deal with it, and we'll discuss it, and then we have a methodology to get through it. Otherwise, we're gonna be at loggerheads for a pretty long time. So, all right. If that's okay, I mean, if I had some indication that that's more desirable to deal with it that way, then we'll proceed with that. Okay, well, let's move on then. We'll deal with this next month. Item 6, communications. You want to take it from here?
Yep. And item A there is just, in Patrick, we spoke about it in the update of the minutes, so that was just a kind of a recap that the Common Council did approve the vehicle option to come up with the $17,774. So I just wanted to keep you updated on that.
In our packet here, we have what I believe is the original copy of Resolution R224-20, page, what is it, 30, I don't know, it was overprinted. 37, maybe? Yeah, I guess it would be 37. Is that the original version before any changes were?
Well,
applied?
that could be.
Or maybe, okay, the other thing was, I believe maybe Sarah could explain this. The council, I think, rejected this whole resolution. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So really, this one is kind of dead anyway here.
It is.
Because, all the clauses are still in there. The 45,000 at the bottom is still in there, which Misty had said would need to be edited to the 17,000 something if this was approved. Okay.
And then the next item is the pickleball project. We are in the process of getting that bid. What's different this time is it's going to be a line item bid. And then also the map that I've included in your packet with the highlighted area, that's going to be the base bid, which is really just the pickleball component of it. The balance of the trail and the parking lot and the culverts will be an alternate to the bid, so that'll be coming, once we get the prices, it'll be coming back to the Park Commission.
Would the paths also be an alternate?
Well, all the paths would be alternate except the east-west path that would be able to get from one end to the other, and then the pickleball courts themselves would be the base bid. The Stoner Prairie.
Question on this topic here. Scott, can you tell me when was the opportunity for the Park Commission members? Okay, first I got to ask one question. Is this plan that we're looking at right here, page 40, is this exactly the same as R.A. Smith presented the last time around last year? Or are there any changes to it from last year? I'm kind of thinking the answer is no changes.
I don't believe there is any changes, right?
Okay, so, Scott, can you tell me when was the opportunity for the Park Commission members to discuss the details of this plan and suggest any changes to the outside consultant's version here that we're looking at? And a follow on that, when was the opportunity for the public to comment on this plan? And maybe for one big point, say if they really wanted to use it or not. When did those happen, or when are they going to happen?
There was no such meeting.
That's exactly my
Pickleball
point.
courts?
What?
You're referring to the pickleball?
Pickleball courts, yes, that's exactly my point. I don't believe this was ever an agenda item for the Park Commission, and there was no public comment period. I know the mayor likes it. I don't fault him for proposing it and all, and he found the money available, but maybe there's details of this. I mean, well, we kind of forced in some discussion when it was just up for approval or something about, we didn't like some certain things, the convoluted parking lot. But without being an official agenda item to discuss before it goes out to bid, I will say in advance, I would be inclined to vote against this whole damn thing if we don't have the opportunity to comment on it and change it. And the public should be asked what they think of this too, and find out if they're really going to use it.
Yeah, I would like to add as well. This is David Gorder. We talked earlier about the 5-year plan. In the 5-year plan, Scott, was there any mention of pickleball courts?
I'd have to, not
I think
specific.
the answer is no. Number two, was a study done, or some, as Patrick is suggesting, some public input done? I know the Park Commission has taken tennis courts and striped them in a way. Other communities have done that quite successfully. It seems like the mayor has jumped here to create an expenditure, and then we've come up with a quote plan that's acceptable. One comment I would have, I've gone to the dog park area and have gone in the parking lot. It's extremely tight. I don't think it works. And I wondered if the same engineers that did the dog parking also are proposing this parking.
I believe it was the dog park advocates, which I am a member of, that planned the parking lot for the Sunnyside Dog Park. This pickleball is created by R.A. Smith Associates, and Corey Horton, our former Public Works Director, was the project manager on it.
Okay, so you're saying it's a different engineering firm that did the park.
And a civil engineer, one of the dog park advocates group members, I believe, drew out the plan for the parking lot in Sunnyside Dog Park.
Yeah, well, I would suggest that if there is a critical evaluation of it, it's really pretty inadequate. Again, I think Fitchburg has a requirement to be a community that has high standards, not just standards. And I do think we need to engage the public, and I do think we need to have a thoughtful process. We are to be stewards of land. We are to be vested with the idea that we're interested in the long term, not just the expediency. And I know pickleball is very popular, and what I would say in the 5-year plan is there will be other recreational activities that may be appropriate. And so we need to have a transparent and open process to accommodate that. No one would ever think that you have a 5-year plan and you're not going to change it. But I don't know that the current plan has the mechanism for doing that. But I support Patrick. Yes, this might be a good place for a pickleball. I'm not sure that this is the right number of courts. Where was the market study? Where was the demand? And are we providing pickleball courts for people who live in Oregon, in Verona, and in Madison? Is that our purpose? Where are pickleball courts now? Who's planning more pickleball courts? All of that is missing, I think, in this process. So I would like somebody, maybe the Parks Director, to explain the process and to explain why this makes sense.
I don't know.
If I can chime in here, I think we
enough times last year. I don't know why it's a surprise to anyone.
Well, I kind of think it was always a communication item of tell us what's going on when maybe it's already been done.
If I can chime in here, I think, we've discussed this project, ad nauseum, as far as our sort of distaste for the way it came about was. Obviously none of us are very happy with the design of it, but frankly, that ship has sailed. The mayor decided he wanted pickleball courts, he was gonna find money for pickleball courts, and there were going to be pickleball courts. So that's, we're sort of have to play the hand we're dealt here, and, we're sort of past the point of picking this apart, so we kind of have to make the best of it, and where we're at right now is seeing how this bid is going to be broken apart and then just being prepared for the bids to come in. So I think everybody is pretty clear that the commission would like to be more involved with park planning in the future, but I'd like to, not beat this dead horse any longer on this particular park.
Go ahead.
I disagree. I don't know if this is an issue of build it and they will come kind of thing. Yeah, we had objections, but we sort of had to force our objections in. One thing that I would point out is the next page here that has this pickleball timeline. It starts with apparently next week opening bids. And I made some notes on my page here about what may or may not have happened before February 11th. I wrote down, I'm looking for a date of when was the Park Commission review and comment, when was the public review and comment, when was the plan approval by the Park Commission, when was the RFP sent out, and then what was the bid deadline, which possibly is February 11th. But all of those things before February 11th are missing off of this timeline schedule, and I'm a little afraid that the bids are already out, plans are already out, companies are working out their figures on what it will cost them and ready to send them in next week, I think it is. And then we're going to hear of a selection of a company to go ahead and build it. And I don't think it is proper to just figure, it's already out there, we'll just let it go. I disagree with that version, with that idea.
Well, this did already go out to bids once initially, and then I think it was not approved by the Common Council, and that's why it's out to bid again. Am I right? Being broken up? So we've gone through this process once already, I think.
Unsuccessfully, yeah.
Right, unsuccessfully, yes.
Well,
And the
you'll
only
get a
change
chance
is it's
to-
not a lump sum bid.
We'll all get another chance, a kick of the can when it comes in for bids, so.
And I'm warning you how I'm going to vote.
This is just part of his report, it's not an action item. So,
Should
in the
we go on
interest
to the next one?
yeah,
Mark?
let's,
That's the Stoner Prairie Park planning update, and actually the mayor has approved the formation of an ad hoc committee. Janelle Rice is kind of leading our efforts with this project, and we're in the process of creating that ad hoc committee, and once we get that approved by the mayor, then we'll begin planning in earnest.
has that been established? I mean, the members of it? I just wondered who was
Nope,
on
it hasn't been established. We're working towards that ad hoc committee, how many members, who it's going to be. Ideally, it's going to have residents or representation from each of the neighboring neighborhood associations and some other stakeholders as.
Will this park commission have anybody on it, or?
Well, Sue's going to be on it. Sue Easterday, because she's a representative of a neighborhood association. Certainly, if anyone else is interested as a park commission member to be.
Well, David is on the list of our participants.
Well, David
Gardner.
Gardner too, yeah. So that's in the works. And then the North Fish Hatchery Road Neighborhood Hub Project update. We did send out a proposal or sent out an RFP for proposals from engineering firms. We did interview three firms, and we are recommending Ingberg Anderson Architects of Madison, and now we're kind of working on that pre-approval and resolution and those kinds of things. So that'll be forthcoming in the near future.
That's it?
That's for communication, yep.
Thanks, Scott.
You're welcome.
All right, you kind of went through staff reports, right? Or
Yep, and actually, if I could, I did want to provide some additional recreation report information. They're having their virtual daddy-daughter dance, and they currently have 66 total participants, which is pretty good. We actually, too, have a warming house at McKee Farms Park for the skating rink with warming house hours on Monday through Thursday from 3 to 5 and Saturday and Sunday from noon to 4. And then actually Chad is working on youth dance. We're going to try to get a youth dance program going starting in March. Certainly with all the COVID and CDC restrictions and those kind of protocols. So I just wanted to report on that as additional information.
all right.
Comment?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, as far as, between Joran's report here and the Parks report and the Recreation report, I think I had mentioned this to Scott on the phone. I think that there are probably a lot of eyes on what our two Recreation Department employees are doing when they are reassigned over to work with the Parks crew. And in Joran's report there on the Parks report, it just mentions one line in the middle right there, painting and rebuilding signs. And I know, yes, it is correct that the two Recreation Department employees are, when they spend their time with the Parks crew, then they're doing stuff that is reported in the Parks report. I would suggest that Joran split out what extra things Chad and Austin are doing when they are working with the Parks crew, so that everybody, us, council, anybody, public, can see what extra things are being done when they're shifted over to their other alternate positions. And even if it's redundant, in the last report, Chad did detail out a bunch of park signs that he had already completed and ones he was working on. I think that was, again, very valuable to show all the work that he is doing, list whatever Austin may be doing. I'm not real clear. I know, Austin, I've heard, is working on the warming house at McKee Park for the ice skating. So that's things that could be reported so everybody sees what they are doing, because we went through so much effort to keep those two guys on. We need to show that they're doing useful things.
They're currently in January. They were working full time in the recreation department.
Yeah, I see a lot of things listed here, which is good for the future about working in the office.
And
organizing
the only
all these
real thing
activities.
that they have to complete in the park division is the park ID sign. So
Okay,
they're fully recreation at this point.
Oh, okay, all right. Chad mentioned at the bottom there, continue to work on park signs as time allows. As far as the skating, I did stop by there yesterday. This is a kind of a general report, kind of feedback to the crews. The ice skating rink at McKee looks good. I saw rubber mats, from the shelter out to the pond, looks good and everything. You got a railing for people to walk on to get safely out to the pond. One question, I don't know if Joran is aware that of the 4 lights that light up the ice skating pond, the one to the northeast is burnt out. But I would agree this is not the weather to go out there and try and fix a light. But the 3 lights out of 4 is adequate for this. One thing that I would suggest, and I did suggest this several years ago, and my suggestion was rejected, so I'm going to bring it up here in this meeting. We also went through quite a bit of discussion to save money on things. And I objected to this several years ago and was told, no, we just like to keep doing it the same way. The garden hose comes off of the fire hydrant in McKee Park and goes and feeds into the ice skating pond. And then when the pond fills up, it's supposed to be a floating ice skating surface, a floating ice sheet. When it fills up to the level of the overflow pipe, as it is right now and as it will be for the rest of winter, the water goes over the overflow and right down the drain. And I believe, if I remember correctly, in a way past year's meeting, the Fitchburg water utility was billing the Fitchburg Parks Department if I'm right here, if I remember, $4,000 for the water used there. And literally, when we were just trying to save money on things to keep the 2 rec guys on, this is pouring water down the drain, literally, and figuratively, that is pouring money down the drain. So I would like to suggest that we got a really cold spell coming up next week. I would suggest turning off the garden hose and turning off the fire hydrant and let all of it freeze instead of having an open hole through the ice, and see if the water level does actually drop, which I am kind of thinking it will not drop, and the whole pond will freeze over, and we won't be wasting the water and wasting the money to pay for it. Some years ago in the spring, at the end of the season, when the garden hose from the fire hydrant was shut off, I watched for like several days. I went by and looked. The garden hose was shut off. The water in the ice skating pond did not go down. So if it does not go down, why keep adding water all season here? And if it does happen to drop significantly, then turn on the fire hydrant and turn on the garden hose again. Okay.
That's it?
Then, then I'll throw on one more comment right here. As I read through these reports, I am not going to point out any particular report or any particular example, but when I read through them, I do spot some things that I know were worked on in the past, but I happen to know for a fact they were not worked on in January. So just as well that, these reports are updated for new things that are acted on in the given month. This is for the January report. Well, technically it's labeled February, but it's for what happened in January. If something is not acted on, it kind of needs to be correctly taken off the report. If they didn't work on it in January, then I'm done.
Okay. All right. Any other questions, comments for Scott? Hearing none, we'll move on. Item 8 is future agenda items, Sunnyside Park Capital Improvement Plan. And announcements for the next meetings will be March 4th and April 1st. And we're down to an adjournment, so if you have no more comments or additions, then we should need a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those in favor? Motion carried. We are adjourned.